Lucas opened his eyes to a world that was anything but familiar. Bright lights flooded the massive arena, casting sharp, angular shadows on walls that seemed alive. The structure pulsated faintly, as if it were part machine, part organism. Around him, other fighters were waking, shaking off the disorientation of their transport pods. The air smelled faintly of metal and something bitter. "Where the hell am I?" Lucas muttered, running a hand through his short, dark hair. His fingers came away damp. Sweat, maybe, or whatever liquid the pods used to keep the occupants fresh during travel. "You're in the great arena of Zavrix, Earthman," came a voice to his right. Lucas turned and found himself face to face with a man who appeared as human as he was, except for the faint shimmer of golden circuitry running up his neck. The man smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "You'll catch on quickly. If you don't, you'll die quickly." Lucas frowned. "Who are you?" "Call me Brax. We'll be spending a lot of time together. I'm afraid." "What the hell is this place, Brax?" Brax gestured to the arena floor. Even as he spoke, Lucas noticed the buzzing sound of distant, multi-species crowds gathering in unseen stands. "This is where the galaxy's most entertaining warriors come to fight and die. Someone's idea of sport." "Sport? You've got to be kidding me." Brax leaned closer, his tone low. "I never kid about life and death, Earthman. Just remember, it's not about winning. It's about surviving long enough to be useful." Lucas narrowed his eyes. "Useful to who?" Before Brax could respond, a deep, resonating hum shook the floor. A figure descended from above. Massive, winged, encased in shimmering armor that looked like liquid mercury hardened mid-flow. It spoke in a language Lucas couldn't understand, and yet the meaning was perfectly clear. Introductions were over. The games were about to begin. A side door opened with a low hiss, and a line of aliens, each more grotesque and awe-inspiring than the last, marched out to the center of the arena. Lucas glanced at Brax, who was already taking up a defensive stance. "I don't even have a weapon," Lucas said. "Think fast," Brax replied. He pointed toward a rack of alien tools that looked as likely to bite as to be wielded. "Pick something and pray it doesn't kill you before your opponents do." Lucas sprinted toward the rack and grabbed what appeared to be a long, slightly curved blade. It vibrated slightly in his grip, humming with some sort of power he didn't understand. He turned just in time to see Brax sidestep a lunging creature. Something that looked like a crocodile but stood on two legs and carried a spiked mace in each clawed hand. Lucas ducked as a whip of glowing energy crackled overhead. The wielder, a slender, insectoid being, clicked its mandibles at him in what might have been a taunt. "You've got to be kidding me," Lucas muttered. "Focus," Brax shouted. He slammed a heavy, armored fist into the crocodile thing's snout, sending it staggering. "Eyes open, back straight, keep moving." Lucas dodged a second whip strike and swung his blade. The weapon hummed louder, almost like it was urging him on. The insectoid's whip went limp as the blade cut through it. Lucas didn't stop to think. He lunged forward, driving the blade through the alien's chest. It crumpled, emitting a faint, high-pitched whistle before falling silent. "Not bad," Brax called, his voice laced with a mixture of approval and something Lucas couldn't quite place. "But don't let it go to your head." "I wasn't planning on it," Lucas replied, though his heart was pounding. He turned to see Brax dispatch the crocodile thing with a brutal twist of its neck. As the fight continued, Lucas and Brax found themselves standing back to back, fending off attackers from all sides. Lucas had no idea how long they fought. Minutes? Hours? Time blurred in the heat of battle. All he knew was that he was still alive, still standing, and somehow he and Brax were still on their feet when the final opponent fell. A loud chime echoed through the arena, signaling the end of the round. Lucas lowered his blade, chest heaving, and looked over at Brax. The man nodded at him, a hint of a grin pulling at the corner of his mouth. "Not bad for your first fight," Brax said. "But don't get comfortable. This was just the warm-up." Vika moved swiftly through the corridors of the arena's inner sanctum, her clawed feet clicking against the polished stone floor. The rhythmic sound steadied her thoughts. She was not used to losing or even coming close to it. For the first time, her mind was abuzz with questions she had never needed to ask. Who was this human? How had he done what no one else had? A low growl from behind startled her out of her thoughts. "Vika!" A voice rumbled. She turned to see Norik, one of her sparring partners and a fellow Zarian, standing with arms crossed. His gray scales caught the dim light. "You look troubled." "I am not troubled," she snapped. "Just curious." "Curious about what?" Norik stepped closer, his heavy frame towering over most beings in the arena. "You mean the human, don't you?" Vika narrowed her eyes. "He is different. I underestimated him." Norik chuckled. "You? Admitting you underestimated someone? That's new." Her gaze darkened, but she didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she started walking again, forcing Norik to keep up. He fought with strategy rather than brute strength. It was unconventional. Norik shrugged. "Unconventional or not, you held your own. No one expects you to win every single match." Vika stopped in her tracks and fixed him with a piercing stare. "I expect that. Losing is not an option." "Vika!" Norik's voice softened. "No one thinks less of you because of one fight." "Enough," she said sharply. "I will not be defeated again." Norik held up his hands in mock surrender. All right. So what's your plan?" Vika hesitated. For a moment, she considered keeping her thoughts to herself, but the weight of the encounter pushed her to speak. "I need to learn more about him. About humans." "Humans?" Norik arched a scaled brow. "What's there to learn? They're short-lived, physically weaker than us, and they think differently," she interrupted. "He fought me in ways I couldn't predict. I need to understand how he thinks, how he fights." Norik scratched his chin. "So what? You're going to chat him up in the training hall?" "If I must," Vika said. She wasn't entirely certain how one chatted with a human, but she was determined to find out. Later that evening, she found herself lingering near the arena's communal training area. The sounds of clashing weapons and shouted commands filled the air. Vika watched from the shadows as Lucas sparred with another human. His movements were deliberate, almost playful at times. He wasn't trying to overwhelm his opponent. He was studying them, adapting. "Having fun spying?" Lucas called out without looking at her. Vika's eyes narrowed. How had he noticed her? She stepped into the light. "You are observant," she said. Lucas chuckled and lowered his practice sword. "It's hard to miss someone like you standing in the corner. You fight differently than anyone I have faced before," she said. "I want to know why." Lucas wiped sweat from his brow. "Why? Trying to figure out how to beat me next time. Perhaps." Her tone was even, but she didn't deny it. "You use your mind more than your body. Most warriors rely solely on their strength." Lucas leaned against the wall, regarding her carefully. "Well, most warriors haven't been in my position. Humans aren't exactly the biggest or strongest species out here. We've had to get creative to survive." "Creative," Vika repeated, tasting the word. "What does that mean?" "It means thinking outside the box, adapting, exploiting weaknesses, using the environment to your advantage." He paused, watching her reaction. "Why the sudden interest?" Vika's tail flicked, betraying her inner conflict. "I do not like uncertainty. You introduced it." Lucas smirked. "So you're trying to eliminate the unknown factor?" "Yes." "Well," Lucas said, picking up his practice sword again. "If you want to understand me, you'll have to spend more time with me." Vika frowned. "You think I should train with you?" "I think it couldn't hurt. I'll learn from you, you'll learn from me. Might even make us both better fighters." She studied him for a long moment, weighing the offer. Finally, she gave a curt nod. "Very well." As they took up positions to spar, Norik watched from the doorway, shaking his head. "This is going to be interesting," he muttered to himself before slipping away. For Vika and Lucas, it was the start of something neither of them fully understood yet. a mutual exchange of knowledge that would shape their future encounters in ways neither could predict. The arena was quiet. Training hours were over, and most of the combatants had retreated to their quarters to rest. The distant hum of alien machinery reverberated through the halls, blending with the faint, rhythmic drip of condensation from unseen vents. Lucas leaned against the rail of one of the observation decks, his eyes on the now empty battleground below. The silence gave him time to think, and thinking these days was becoming a more complex endeavor. Footsteps approached from behind, light but deliberate. He didn't have to turn to know it was Vika. "You're always here," she said simply, her voice calm, neutral. She joined him at the railing, her gaze fixed on the same stretch of sandy ground he'd been studying. "Do humans not rest?" "We rest," Lucas replied, keeping his eyes on the arena floor. "Just not all the time. Sometimes we think about things." Vika tilted her head slightly. "What is there to think about? You fight, you survive, and then you fight again. That's one way to look at it." He glanced over at her. "But I guess that's the difference between us. Humans have to think about what's next. We can't rely on brute strength or biological advantages. If we don't plan, we die." She shifted her weight, considering his words. "Planning is fine, but overthinking leads to hesitation. And hesitation gets you killed." Lucas finished, nodding. "I've heard that before." Vika's tail flicked once, a motion Lucas was beginning to understand as a sign she was working through an idea. "You are still adjusting to the arena," she said. "But you've lasted longer than most humans here. That is unusual." "Unusual isn't the same as good," Lucas said. "Let's be honest, Vika. You could have killed me in that last match if you wanted to." Her eyes narrowed, the faint silver streaks in her scales catching the dim light. "You assume too much. Am I wrong?" For a long moment she didn't answer. Instead, she let the silence stretch between them. Lucas wasn't sure if she was annoyed, contemplative, or something in between. "Perhaps," she said at last. "But if you are wrong, what does that change? Maybe nothing, but maybe it means I'm doing something right. And maybe it means you're starting to see me as more than just a punching bag." Vika's lips curled upward, the closest thing to a smile he'd seen from her. "A punching bag that can punch back." "Exactly," Lucas said, matching her smirk. "So what brings you here tonight? Surely you're not just here to exchange compliments." "I don't waste my time with compliments." Her voice carried a hint of amusement. "I came to talk strategy." "Strategy?" He raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that a little unusual for you? I thought you preferred instinct." "Instinct only takes you so far. You've made me reconsider some of my approaches." Lucas turned fully to face her, folding his arms across his chest. "All right, I'm listening." Vika gestured toward the arena floor. "You think about what's next. You anticipate. I want to learn how you do that." "I thought Zarians didn't need human tricks," he said, his tone teasing. "Aren't you all natural-born warriors?" "Don't misunderstand me," she replied, her voice steady. "I am still superior to you in many ways, but you have shown me that strength is not always enough." Lucas nodded slowly. "Fair enough. So, you want me to teach you how to think like a human?" "Not entirely. I want you to teach me how you think. There is a difference." He leaned back against the railing, a small grin tugging at his lips. "All right, but you'll have to give me something in return." Vika's eyes narrowed again. "And what would that be?" "Help me understand Zarian combat," Lucas said. "You're faster, stronger, and more experienced. If I can learn how you move, how you react, maybe I'll last more than a few minutes against you next time." Her tail flicked again, more deliberate this time. "A trade, then. I teach you, and you teach me." Lucas extended a hand. "Deal?" She eyed his hand for a moment before gripping it firmly, her claws pressing lightly against his skin. "Deal." They stood in silence for a moment, still shaking hands, each sizing the other up. Then, as if by unspoken agreement, they released their grip at the same time and turned back toward the arena. "You know," Lucas said after a moment, "this might actually work." Only if you stop overthinking, Vika replied. Deal, Lucas said again, chuckling. But you have to promise not to pull your punches. She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. I never do. They fell into step together, walking back toward the training hall. The quiet hum of the arena followed them, but neither spoke further. For now, there was a balance, a mutual understanding that was still fragile but undeniable. It was a start. Chapter 4. The Unlikely Alliance. The training hall buzzed with the energy of preparation. Fighters of all shapes and sizes moved across the mats, exchanging blows, testing strategies, and perfecting their techniques. In one corner, Lucas squared off against Vika. The two had settled into an unspoken routine. Mornings spent sparring, afternoons trading knowledge. Keep your stance wider, Vika said, circling him slowly. You're still too easy to push off balance. Lucas adjusted his feet. You've said that 3 times now, and yet you keep making the same mistake, Vika retorted. Do it again. Lucas feinted to the left, drawing a quick reaction from Vika, then stepped right and swung his training sword low. She blocked effortlessly, her blade stopping his in midair. He shifted his weight, trying to press forward, but she shoved him back with a single, well-placed strike. Damn, Lucas muttered, stumbling slightly. How do you keep catching me? You're telegraphing your moves, Vika replied. Your shoulders give away your direction before you act. If I can see it, anyone can. Lucas wiped sweat from his brow. All right, fine. How do I stop telegraphing? Vika's tail flicked. You learn to think without showing. That's what we're here for. Great, Lucas said. Just what I needed. Another mystery to solve. She narrowed her eyes at him, but there was no real hostility. Enough talking. Again. Lucas launched another series of strikes, mixing in feints and quick directional changes. Vika parried most of them, but he managed to graze her side with one swing. She stepped back and nodded once. Better, better, Lucas repeated. That's the first time you've said that. Don't let it go to your head, Vika said. You're still predictable. Just less so. Gee, thanks, Lucas muttered. He took a step back, catching his breath. Your turn. Vika raised an eyebrow. My turn for what? Let's switch it up. You teach me Zarian technique, I'll teach you human tactics. He rested the flat of his sword against his shoulder. You said you wanted to understand how we think. This is your chance. Vika considered him for a moment before nodding. Very well. Show me. Lucas motioned her forward. All right, you're strong, you're fast. But sometimes strength and speed aren't enough. Sometimes you have to fight smarter, not harder. Your species relies too much on cleverness, Vika said. It makes you vulnerable. Maybe, Lucas admitted. But it also means we can come up with creative solutions. He pointed to a stack of training dummies across the room. See those? Vika nodded. Yes. Let's say you're surrounded and outnumbered. Instead of charging in headfirst, you use the environment. Knock over that stack. It's unstable. If you hit it just right, it'll collapse and take out at least 1 or 2 attackers. Vika's tail flicked thoughtfully. You assume that the attackers will not anticipate this. Exactly. It's about doing the unexpected. Sometimes the best move isn't the strongest one. Vika walked over to the stack and studied it closely. With a swift kick, she sent the dummies tumbling down. They crashed into each other, toppling like dominoes. She turned back to Lucas. It works, but it feels dishonorable. Survival isn't about honor, Lucas said. It's about staying alive long enough to fight another day. That is where our views differ, Vika said. To a Zarian, survival without honor is no survival at all. Lucas shrugged. I'm not saying you have to give up your code. I'm saying you can add to it. Strength is still your greatest asset. But if you combine it with a little strategy, you become unstoppable. She studied him carefully. You make it sound simple. It's not, Lucas admitted. It takes practice, and trial and error. That's why we're here. Vika glanced at the fallen dummies. then back at Lucas. Show me more. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of strikes, blocks, and tactics. They pushed each other hard. Vika forcing Lucas to improve his form and balance, Lucas teaching Vika how to think unpredictably. By the time they stopped, both were drenched in sweat and breathing heavily. "You're improving," Vika said, her tone neutral. "So are you," Lucas replied. "You're starting to see the bigger picture." Vika's lips curled slightly, her version of a smile. Perhaps. They left the training hall together, walking side by side down the dimly lit corridor. The air was cooler here, the noise of the arena fading into the distance. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, almost companionable. Lucas finally broke it. "You know, you're not as bad as I thought." Vika gave him a sidelong glance. "Neither are you." "Thanks," he said. "I think." Their footsteps echoed in unison as they continued down the corridor, two warriors from different worlds, learning from each other in ways neither had expected. Chapter 5. A New Challenge. The tournament overseers didn't waste time. Only a few days had passed since Vika and Lucas had agreed to train together, and now the arena's loudspeakers blared out the announcement of their next match. Lucas rubbed the back of his neck, glancing sideways at Vika as they both stood before the announcement board. Tag Team Trial. Lucas and Vika versus Koroth the Unbreakable. Lucas squinted at the name. Unbreakable. That's comforting. Vika's jaw tightened, her scaled brow furrowing as she read the name. Koroth is not a warrior to take lightly. Sounds like you know him, Lucas said. Should I be worried? She turned to face him. Worrying will do nothing. Preparation, on the other hand, might keep you alive. Right? I'll put that on my to-do list. Lucas sighed. So who is this guy? A veteran of the championship circuit. Out how to beat him together. Vika nodded. Yes, together. All right, Lucas said, crossing his arms. What's the plan? She studied him for a moment before responding. We divide his attention. Alone, neither of us can overpower him. But if we force him to fight on two fronts, he will make mistakes. Classic divide and conquer, Lucas said. I like it. Any idea how we split up the roles? I will draw his initial strikes, Vika said. You focus on finding an opening. Koroth has weak points like any other being, but they are well protected. If you can spot one and exploit it, we will have a chance. Lucas nodded. Got it. What's our backup plan? We adapt, Vika replied. That is what you humans do best, is it not? He smirked. I'll take that as a compliment. Vika's tail flicked, though she said nothing more. Instead, she turned and started toward the training hall. Come, we have work to do. Lucas followed her, still trying to wrap his head around the idea of standing shoulder to shoulder with a warrior like Vika. It was one thing to train together in the quiet of the practice rooms. It was another to face a fighter like Koroth with their lives on the line. The next morning, the arena buzzed with anticipation. The stands were packed with spectators from across the galaxy, their voices blending into a cacophony of roars, clicks, and hisses. The announcer's voice boomed out, introducing the fighters as they stepped into the massive ring. First came Koroth, a towering brute whose hulking frame looked as though it had been chiseled from living stone. He carried no weapon. His fists alone were enough to intimidate most challengers. The crowd erupted in cheers, clearly favoring the veteran champion. Then Lucas and Vika entered together, earning a mix of curious murmurs and skeptical laughter. Lucas felt the weight of the crowd's eyes on him, but he forced himself to focus. This wasn't about the audience. It was about survival and about proving that their partnership could work. The announcer's voice faded, and the arena fell silent. Koroth advanced without hesitation, his massive feet thudding against the ground with each step. Vika moved forward, her posture calm and deliberate. Lucas hung back, watching, waiting for his moment. The first clash was brutal. Koroth swung a fist the size of a boulder, and Vika dodged with precision, her claws raking against his side. The blow didn't seem to faze him. He lashed out again, faster than Lucas would have thought possible, and Vika barely managed to leap out of the way. "You weren't kidding about his strength?" Lucas called out, keeping his distance. "Stay focused," Vika snapped, darting in to strike again. "You'll get your chance." Lucas circled, watching Karatha's movements closely. The giant's attacks were powerful, but each swing left him open for a split second. Lucas noticed that Karatha's left side was slower to recover than his right. He filed the observation away, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Vika continued to engage Karath head-on, her strikes drawing his attention and keeping him moving. Every now and then, she glanced at Lucas, silently urging him to act. Finally, when Karath lunged too far forward, Lucas saw his opening. "Now!" Vika shouted. Lucas darted in, aiming for the exposed joint in Karatha's armor-like hide. His blade struck true, slicing into a vulnerable seam. Karath roared in pain, rearing back and leaving an even larger gap in his defense. Vika seized the opportunity, delivering a powerful strike to his side. The crowd's cheers and gasps blended into a deafening roar. Karath stumbled, clearly off balance. Lucas and Vika pressed the advantage, alternating their attacks to keep him on the defensive. Finally, with a coordinated blow from both of them, Karath collapsed to one knee. The announcer declared the match over, and the crowd erupted into wild applause. Lucas leaned on his blade, catching his breath as Vika approached him. Her expression was unreadable, but her tone carried a hint of approval. "Well done," she said. "You too," Lucas replied, managing a small grin. "I guess we make a pretty good team." Vika tilted her head, as if considering his words. "It seems we do." Chapter 6. The Kiss. The aftermath of the fight was a blur. Lucas barely remembered leaving the arena or hearing the booming announcement that they had won. By the time he realized where he was leaning against the cold stone wall of a quiet hallway, still catching his breath. His chest ached, and his muscles felt like they'd been through a meat grinder, but the adrenaline was beginning to fade. Vika stood a few feet away, her tall frame casting a long shadow under the dim, flickering lights. Her gaze was fixed on the floor, her clawed hands resting at her sides. She looked thoughtful, maybe even distant. "Still breathing?" Lucas asked, his voice breaking the silence. She looked up, her metallic eyes locking onto his. "I am," she said. "You fought well." Lucas shrugged, then winced at the movement. "I just followed your lead." "You did more than that," Vika said, stepping closer. Her voice was quieter than usual, and it had lost some of its usual edge. "Your timing, your instincts, they were sharp. I did not expect that." "Guess I'm full of surprises," Lucas said, managing a tired grin. Vika tilted her head slightly. "It is rare for me to feel uncertainty in combat, but with you it is different. I know I can rely on you." "Coming from you, I'll take that as a huge compliment," Lucas said. He paused, studying her expression. She wasn't looking away, but something in her posture had shifted. Her shoulders were less rigid, her stance more open. "You are injured," she said, her voice softer now. She reached out, her clawed fingers brushing against his arm. "You should rest." "I'm fine," Lucas said, though his body protested against the words. He looked down at her hand on his arm. "Are you okay?" She hesitated for just a moment before replying. "I am fine." "That didn't sound very convincing," Lucas said. "What's on your mind?" Vika's tail flicked, a motion he had come to recognize as a sign she was thinking. Finally, she said, "I have fought many battles. I have stood alone in the arena for years. But what we did together, it was different. It felt better." "Better," Lucas repeated, his brows raising. "I thought you Zarians valued fighting solo, proving your strength on your own." "We do," she said. "But this was not just a fight. It was something else. It was teamwork," Lucas offered. Vika's lips curved slightly, almost forming a smile. "Yes, teamwork. It is new to me." "I think we make a pretty good team," Lucas said. His voice had softened too, his usual humor tempered by the quiet atmosphere around them. I've never fought alongside someone like you. You're... He trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. He wasn't sure what he was trying to say, but something about Vika in that moment, her openness, her vulnerability, was drawing him in. Vika took another step closer. You are different from other humans, from other fighters. I have never felt this before. What are you saying? Lucas asked quietly. I am saying, she said, her voice steady, that you have changed the way I think, the way I feel. Lucas's chest tightened. He looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't the cold, unyielding warrior he had first met. There was more to her, layers he hadn't seen before. Vika, Before he could finish, she moved closer, her face inches from his. Lucas's breath caught. He wasn't sure who moved first, but suddenly her lips were on his. Her touch was firm yet careful. It was unlike anything he had ever felt. He let himself lean into it, his hand resting on her shoulder. The moment seemed to stretch, time slowing as he became lost in the sensation. When they finally broke apart, he opened his eyes to find her looking at him, her expression as unreadable as ever. That was unexpected, he said, his voice shaky but filled with a quiet laugh. Vika tilted her head. Do you regret it? Not at all, Lucas said. But you really caught me off guard. I am full of surprises, she said, echoing his earlier words. Her lips curved again in that faint, almost smile. You should rest now. Tomorrow we train again. Lucas grinned. Sure thing, coach. As they turned to leave, Lucas couldn't help but glance back at her. The Vika he had once feared and respected had become someone he trusted, someone he felt drawn to in a way he hadn't expected. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Chapter 7, Crossing Boundaries. The training hall was quiet that morning. Most of the other fighters had already come and gone, leaving only the faint hum of alien machinery in the background. Lucas leaned on a wooden training post, his breathing steady as he watched Vika practice her footwork. Her movements were sharp and deliberate, each step carefully placed, each shift of weight perfectly balanced. You're in a different mood today, Lucas said, breaking the silence. Vika didn't stop. What do you mean? You're less intense than usual, he replied. More focused, sure, but not like you're trying to prove something. You've got a different kind of energy. Vika slowed her steps, turning to face him. And this is unusual? Yeah, Lucas said. Usually you're all about winning, dominating the fight. Today you're, I don't know, more measured. Vika paused, resting her hands on her hips. Perhaps I am thinking more than before, considering what we have been through. It changes things. Lucas tilted his head. You mean that match? It's not the first tough fight you've had. No, she said. It's not. But it was different. I wasn't alone. Her words hung in the air. Lucas scratched the back of his neck, not sure how to respond right away. Finally, he said, Is that a bad thing? Vika shook her head slowly. No, it is unexpected. I am not used to it. Fighting alongside someone else, trusting them to have my back. It's not how I was trained. It's not how I was taught to think. Well, Lucas said, stepping away from the training post, maybe it's time to unlearn a few things. She arched a brow. Unlearn? Yeah, Lucas said. You're not the same fighter you were when we first met. You've got skills, you've got instincts, but now you've got something else, too. You've got someone in your corner. Vika studied him, her metallic eyes narrowing slightly. And you believe that is enough? It's more than enough, Lucas said. I mean, look at what we've done so far. We've gone up against some of the toughest fighters in the arena and come out on top. That doesn't happen without trust. Trust? Vika repeated, the word unfamiliar on her tongue. It is not something I have valued before. Well, start valuing it now, Lucas said. He walked over to her, stopping just a few feet away. You don't have to fight alone anymore. You've got me. Vika's tail flicked once, her gaze never leaving his. You are confident. Not confident, Lucas said. Just honest. She let out a faint, almost imperceptible laugh. I did not think humans could be so bold. We're full of surprises, Lucas said. You're learning that firsthand. Vika stepped closer, her tone softening. Perhaps I am. They stood there for a moment, neither speaking. The silence was comfortable, almost companionable. Lucas could feel a shift in the air, something he couldn't quite put into words. He knew Vika felt it too. I still do not understand your species fully, she said finally. Your ways are different, strange. Strange isn't always bad, Lucas said. Sometimes it's what makes things work. She tilted her head slightly. Work? Yeah, Lucas said, his voice quieter now. Like us. We're different, but somehow we make sense together. Vika looked at him, her expression unreadable. You are a strange human. Thanks, Lucas said with a smirk. I'll take that as a compliment. She nodded once, her lips curving just slightly at the corners. It was meant as one. Lucas felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. You know, he said, I think we've got something pretty special here. Vika's eyes searched his face, as if trying to read something in his expression. Then, almost hesitantly, she reached out and rested a clawed hand on his shoulder. Perhaps we do. Lucas placed his hand over hers, his grip firm but gentle. Good. Let's keep it that way. She nodded again, the faintest smile on her lips. Yes, let us keep it that way. They stayed like that for a moment longer, a quiet understanding passing between them. For the first time since coming to the arena, Lucas felt like he wasn't alone anymore. He had found something, someone, that made him feel like he could face whatever came next. Chapter 8. A new path forward. The arena floor was still covered in the dust of the last match, but it didn't matter anymore. Lucas and Vika stood at the center of it, flanked by two overseers who had just declared their victory. Around them, the stands sat empty, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded only hours ago. The quiet was welcome. For once, there were no cheers, no jeers, just silence. Lucas glanced at Vika, her form towering slightly above his. She looked as composed as ever, her breathing calm, her stance steady. But he knew better now. He'd learned to read her subtleties. The flick of her tail that showed she was thinking, the faint narrowing of her metallic eyes when she was uncertain. Right now, she was both thinking, uncertain, and maybe even a little bit hopeful. Well, Lucas said, his voice breaking the stillness. That's it. We're free. Vika turned her head to look at him. You make it sound so simple. It kind of is, Lucas replied. We did what they asked. We fought, we survived, and now we get to walk out of here. Vika's gaze returned to the horizon, the towering walls of the arena that had held them captive. What lies beyond these walls is still unknown. Yeah, Lucas said, but isn't that the point? It's a chance to figure it out. She was silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she said, You have changed the way I see the world, Lucas. Before, I only saw strength and victory. But now, I see something more. Lucas smiled faintly. You've changed how I see things too, Vika. I never thought I'd make it this far, let alone with someone like you at my side. Someone like me? Vika repeated, as if testing the phrase. Her tail flicked once. We are different, you and I. Yet together, we have done what few believed possible. That's why we should stick together, Lucas said. Out there, wherever we go next, we'll still need each other. She turned back to him fully now, her metallic eyes meeting his. And what will we do out there? Lucas shrugged. I don't know. Explore. Find something better than this. We've got options now. Options, Vika echoed. It is a strange concept. You'll get used to it, Lucas said, his tone lighter. And if not, I'll be there to help. Vika's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. You are a strange human, Lucas. Yeah, he replied. But you're stuck with me. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then nodded. Perhaps that is not such a bad thing. Glad you think so, Lucas said. He stepped closer, holding out his hand. Ready to leave this place behind? Vika looked down at his hand, then back up at him. Slowly, she reached out and gripped his arm firmly. Ready. Together, they turned and began walking toward the open gates. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lucas didn't feel trapped. And for the first time, Vika felt something she couldn't put into words. Something that went beyond strength, beyond fighting. As they stepped out of the arena and into the unknown, they were no longer just gladiators. They were partners, facing whatever came next as equals.